Public? Alright, okay, so just remind members then all of the normal housekeeping in terms of mobile phones, other electronic devices, including your tablets. Just remind members about the protocols around the use of tablets and so on. Okay, so could I first of all asking any members of the committee that have any interest to declare relevant to today's agenda. None being declared, we move on then to apologies. We have no apologies as yet to declare. Any other apologies to? Yeah. None to be declared. We move on to the draft minutes of the meeting on page 5 of your pack. So, call it. Members are the content with the draft minutes for the meeting of the 13th of February.
Great.
Again, is agreed. Yes, thank you very much. Then to the chairperson business. Then just 3.1, just a couple of points. Just remind members, you know, that we had Donald Hoodless and Will Hare here this morning scheduled for a briefing, but as you know, we had discussed that in the context of the ongoing negotiations between the department and the contractors around the issue of alleged overpayments and plant maintenance contracts. And as we understand, there are meetings on today as we speak. Actually, we've been advised formally by the department that that's happening today, and what they're also saying is then if there is any agreement at that meeting, then obviously the outcome of that would be tabled at the next scheduled meeting of the board of the housing sector, which will be on the 26th of February. So on that basis, we have rescheduled the session with Will Hare and Donald Hoodless to take place after that meeting. I think we agreed that last week. It would make sense, and we did make it very clear also that we were prepared to reschedule this particular briefing on the basis of that and in that context, but we didn't want that to be seen as any wish to see any further unnecessary delay around the negotiations. So we've made that clear, and say we are being given our assurances, and we have to take that at face value, of course, that those discussions are on today, and hopefully they can reach a successful conclusion. So members happy enough to note that, and so obviously we will reschedule. I think at this moment in time it may well be the 6th of March before we have a return. That's only 2 weeks, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
not even. Is
it is 2 weeks. Yes.
So again, we're in that kind of bit of a bind, but I think members made their position very clear last week. We don't want this to trail on indefinitely, or we don't want to be doing anything which would, signal that we're not anxious to get it resolved quickly. But that's the information we have.
So next Thursday is not a possibility. The board's on Wednesday.
Mr. Hoodless isn't available.
Yeah. It's around availability and the schedule of the board. Okay, so members happy enough to note that then, and then we will come back to that. And just then further that, the Deputy Chair and Kevin and myself met with Will Hare yesterday to discuss the committee concerns regarding the delivery of papers in respect of the inquiry. And I believe this later on, but I mean, just suffice to say that we had a fairly frank discussion around the view of the committee in respect of the timeliness of getting the documentation and so on, and made it clear that we're sitting here a number of weeks into not being able to convene the inquiry because of the issue around papers. But I would want to put on record that Will Hare and Dave Walsh, who were at both of the meeting, and Will in particular, speaking to the Permanent Secretary, made it very, very clear that they were fully intending to, and believe they have been doing, but certainly fully committed to making sure that this committee gets all of the relevant documentation, and are making sure they're sitting down with Kevin and other officials here well in advance of, when we're looking for particular documentation, and we already have quite a considerable volume already provided to us again, I think this week again. So I think on that basis then, obviously, I'd want to acknowledge that that commitment has been made very clear to us by Will Hare yesterday at the meeting. As I say, I just try to reflect the kind of the strong views of the committee, that we want as our priority and under our statutory duty to expedite the inquiry as quickly and as timely as possible. And we do need the relevant documentation. So assurances were sought and assurances were given, commitments were made, and on that basis, I would be happy enough to move on and let's see where that takes us to.
Well, Chair, they were made before.
Accept that, and that's part of our discussions. Dolores yesterday made that clear that we did have those discussions in open session in the committee, but again, I'm just reporting to you. I mean, as I say, it was a very frank discussion, an honest discussion, I believe. Kevin, the Deputy Chair, wants to
Oh, I'm sure it was.
comment on that. So, I mean, I'm satisfied to move on because quite clearly, there will be from time to time that, particularly as we move on to other aspects of the inquiry, some of these, what we need to be careful of is what our terms of reference are. Nobody around this table wants to be getting documentation that they don't need to have. But equally, we need to make sure we have all the relevant documentation that we do need to have. And as I say, I want to just hopefully then we can move on from that point of view. Remember, it's happy enough then to note that. Say we'll see how we progress. Okay, members, thank you for that. You will have an inquiry folder there in front of you this morning under deal with this under matters arising, and in that you'll find a range of information, a letter from the department dated 17th of February regarding the provision of additional information on the Phase 1, a revised issues for consideration paper, and then a revised timeline of known events. So that's in your pack. The department has sent through over 400 pages of additional information on their Phase 1, and as you'll note from the issues paper, the additional information does not provide anything more substantive in terms of evidence in respect to Phase 1 of the inquiry. So we have written, obviously, to the department formally seeking additional information around the key meeting which was held on the 20th of June. And on that basis, then, could I then suggest, because obviously from the meeting yesterday and from garnering what we do need to have, that then from today, then our officials will then initiate the next evidence session and come back this next week with a schedule for that, hopefully which will commence very shortly, taking on board the receipt of the information that we need to get from the department, and then obviously under procedural fairness that any witnesses that have been called are given the due time and documentation that they need to refer to. Members happy enough then that we're then ready then hopefully then to recommence the inquiry business, and that Kevin and the other officials then will just schedule that for us and come back next week for our approval. Members happy enough for that? Okay, thank you members for that. I'll just draw your attention to a draft letter to the department, page 12, requesting written evidence in respect to Phase 2 of the inquiry, and additionally a draft letter is included on page 15 requesting written evidence in respect of Phase 3. Okay, so just let me know that, sir. Okay, so happy enough then to move on that basis to the next item.
Is that inquiry stuff moving on from that, Chairman?
Yeah.
What about the BBC? The whole central point of us being here, the BBC, people who started the ball rolling.
Chair, we haven't received, the committee wrote to the BBC, we haven't received a response other than that they would return to us as soon as possible.
Still haven't received a response.
As soon as possible.
Remind us how long that is.
That's got to be 3 weeks potentially, maybe longer.
And I mean, it certainly would be my very clear view that at the very least, whenever we get our schedule for our evidence sessions on the basis of all the information that we need to have, we need to be going back. So I was intend to return to this issue with BBC at our meeting next week when we are determining the schedule for the reduction of the inquiry.
Well, if they've had 3 weeks, I think it should be contacted before next week again with them.
I don't know this.
Chairman, yeah, I agree with that. And not only that, I mean, we were quite specific when we did write to them 3 weeks ago. Presumably there is some issue or clause under 44 or whatever if there is a non-response, which for 3 weeks there has been. How do we activate that?
Okay, well, I mean, let's go back to them this week. Okay, members happy enough with that? Okay, thank you, Newt. Then just to note for members there that we're asked to sponsor an event, the Aiming Higher Graduation Service, That'll take place on the 3rd of April in room 115. And it's just those that I've signed the sponsorship for that event. Also to remind members of the committee meeting on the 20th of March is due to take place in Newry, and the Chief Executive's office has confirmed Bagenal's Castle as the venue. And I wanted to, again, then a programme will be developed for the afternoon, and members will be made aware of this, as well as travel arrangements and so on, as soon as we have that available. Additionally, when we've done a number of these external meetings, we have did some other attendant events, which was obviously aligned with the committee's strategic work programme. Okay, so moving on then to the next item, which is number 5, and this is consideration of responses to statutory committee inquiries. You'll recall there are a number of inquiries ongoing from various departments, and obviously through the committee system here, a number of matters have been drawn to our attention. We did ask members last week if they wish to provide any particular comments or responses to a number of these inquiries, and please do so, but we haven't had anything provided to us by members. So what Cavan has very kindly sought to do is to try to look through our own record. There's a cover note there on page 20 of your pack. And there's a paper tabled, and that's on page 5 of your tabled items pack. It sets out a number of proposed suggestions. I mean, there's nothing untoward or nothing major, or certainly out with what the committee has already been considering so far. And first item there to deal with would be the committee consultation on the European Work Programme 2014, and that's a OFM-DFM consultation. And what we have provided there is a research paper. That's on page 28 of your papers, your committee papers, and that outlines the European Commission's Work Programme for 2014. So the RAISE paper has identified 2 issues of the Commission's work programme with relevance to the DST, and that's the Labour Mobility Package and the European Accessibility Act, page 65 and 66 respectively. Now, it would be said that, in terms of our work schedule and our strategic programme, those issues haven't been absolute priorities for the committee. That's not to say in their own right they're not important. So it's also again linked to just other European streams. So, if members have any other particular views on this, as opposed to what's been suggested.
Chair, I wonder, are there any opportunities, I haven't read it in detail, I have to confess, around advice services, through social inclusion models within Europe, whether there are any opportunities to extend assistance to our local community and voluntary sector, particularly given the ongoing austerity measures?
We have that in relation to the Signatory programmes, if I remember correctly, or we have a reference to that in terms of the RDF, structural funds and so on. Maybe Kevin could just clear that.
Yeah, it's actually in relation to sustainable urban regeneration. The committee took a briefing in 20 June of last year, prior to your membership, and that related to the 5% of the ERDF being diverted to sustainable urban development, or regeneration. That is still ongoing. Work is still ongoing. Now, whether within that there's the ability of to use that money for those types of services, I'm not sure, but we can look at it. I think, Chair, like many things in Europe, these are very long term issues, so decisions take a long time to come to fruition.
You have to be in at the policy making. I think that's one of the. Chair, can I just add, and I know it'd probably cross into DARD, but there is no similar scheme as like neighbourhood renewal for rural areas, and the rural development programmes, as many of you who have served on them know, the bureaucracy tied in with them is much more substantial than that under neighbourhood renewal, even though some of both of them comes from European funding, and I wonder if that might be an issue upon which we could get some advice. Whether there are greater flexibilities and whether there are other member states able to draw down neighbourhood renewal type funding for rural areas.
Well, we could maybe ask the department, you say it's probably the responsibility of Dara more than here, but it's like us being bureaucratic, but I think we probably just need to go through
Yeah, it's just to have it
the
raised.
system on that,
Yeah.
so we're happy enough to do it, members.
Sure, just to be piece of information on that, I think a lot of the stuff in relation to your postal bail, and there may be some possibilities. I know that they get regular reports in relation to European funding, so it may not be a bad idea to tap in that also.
Good enough.
Okay, members happy enough, then the next section out there will be the committee, the OFM, DFM committee, the signature programmes, and again, this is to look for like stakeholder type comments, and there are a number there which we've suggested. I mean, anybody who's been at any of these events, you'll know there's a range of kind of standard responses to get the stakeholders, which are around joined up and non-duplication, and some that was dealt with at the OFM report was tabled in the Assembly on Monday or Tuesday past there, so there's some debate on the Assembly the other day. So are people happy enough just broadly to adopt the positions which our officials here have tabled for our consideration? Okay. And, okay, so members then content with that?
Good.
To adopt that, then we can move on to the next item, which is item number 6 on the agenda, which is consideration of a full work programme. Okay, again, I think one of the items that we had, one of the issues that we had agreed that we need to return to on a more strategic basis would be the overall situation in respect of housing. And I was just reminding people that we have a very significant presentation to be made to the committee next week, which is around the social housing reform programme. Could I suggest that on the back of that report, then we would then consider what we want to do then additional to social housing provision. I mean, members have already identified a range of issues from homelessness to other housing related services that we want to deal with on an overarching basis. So I suggest, because next week's presentation could well lead to other work around that programme, that we would consider housing in the round once we take the presentation from the department next week on housing, and then return that, because that obviously that's going to, and we've always said we want to be doing our work around housing and the wider housing related matters, you know, in liaison with the department, because we don't want duplication, and none of them still don't. So let's then, as I say, if members content, then we take the housing presentation next week, and then we then look at the housing on a more strategic basis after that and agree a work programme around that.
Yeah, Chairman, just on that, on wider future work programmes, I think, I mean, out with our issues here, you know, given the inquiry, given welfare reform, but I do think we've got to become a bit more focused as a committee in terms of, you know, strategically looking at departmental issues, improvements that can be made. We are in danger of being bogged down in a small number of very important issues, but the resolution of which are out with this particular committee. They're not out with individual members on the committee, but they're out with the committee. I just think we need to start focusing our collective minds on DSD-related issues for the future.
No, I entirely agree with you on that, and I mean, you'll know that we did try to do a couple of like strategic day discussion and away days and all the rest of them for 101 reasons, members' time and so on. We weren't actually able to do that, but you're absolutely right. We do need to return that because we have a much broader responsibility, and there are a lot of issues, some which are challenging and others which are good issues and positive issues, and we also need to highlight and work and give added value there where we can do. And I'm totally and utterly aware of that agenda.
Chair, just wonder in advance, I met with some residents last week in relation to fuel poverty and the replacement of oil by gas, and there are some concerns that in some areas where people are getting the boiler replacement scheme, if it's oil, it's being replaced by oil, you know. And there's also about what happens to those isolated, particularly in rural areas, where they don't have the main gas line. But I'm given to understand there are other systems that are available in terms of introducing gas, which is a cheaper energy source currently, and whether or not the department has any creative thinking around that. I certainly have been speaking to some suppliers and residents who do have ideas. I wonder if we could get an update really on that whole.
Well, I think again, one of field poverty is one of the issues which, I mean, a number of members here have raised this on an ongoing basis, and we've had a couple of presentations fairly recently from the department as well on that, including some of the panel chairpersons, the working group chairpersons. So there's been a fair bit of work done on that, but we need to do that. That's part of, I mean, again, the point that Greg was making, there are a number of issues there which are important, some are ongoing, and we just need to get these scheduled in a way in which they make sense. There's a rhyme and reason to our programme of work, so we're not just being constantly drawn to deal with things, that we're actually proactive on as well. All right, so remember, it's happy enough then that we can reschedule it. Again, there's just a couple of points. Simon Community, for example, has invited the committee to join them for an informal discussion at their premises. But I suggest that any of these housing-related invitations, that we then factor them into our discussion around with housing and the overall. Members content with that? Because we also had another request from the Housing Rights Service to deal with housing private tenants forum, and again that has formed part of our stakeholder engagement so far. So I suggest we put that in the same melting pot for consideration and engagement. Members happy enough with that?
Just on that one, Chairman, I mean, there might be some urgency in that, because one of the things that they wanted to talk about was the landlord registration scheme, and, you know, given that decisions on it are fairly imminent, you know, we might want to not just stick it in along with all the rest of them, but maybe try and get that done quickly.
Yep, not a problem. Okay, members happy enough with that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. So moving on then to item number 7, which is subordinate legislation. We have a number 3 here. So they have an SL1 Social Security pensions, and this is on page 132 of your pack. Okay. This rule will be subject to a negative resolution procedure, and it's just to ask members your content the rule be made. Any comments on that? Comments? Members will be content the SL1 to be made then? Thank you. The rule be made rather. Okay, the next one, Social Security pensions, the flat rate accrual amount order. That's page 140 of your pack. Again, subject to negative resolution. Any comments or are members content for the made? Is that agreed? Yep. Okay, thank you. Then the next one would be the Social Security revaluation of earnings factors order. Again, one page 46. This would be in your pack. Again, subject to negative resolution. Assembly. Committee operation on the 6th of April. Any comment or are members content that the rule be made? Members content that the rule be made? Okay, thank you for that, members. The next final one then would be the automatic enrolment earnings trigger and qualifying earnings bond order. Page 155. Again, subject to negative resolution in the Assembly. So were members content for the rule to be made?
Good.
Okay, members, thank you very much for that. Correspondence then, your next item on the agenda. Are members content to deal with the correspondence as per your memo on page 161? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that. For the work programme, again, you'll see you note on page 228 of your pack. Members are content with that. Again, this will be a changing for the work programme. And we, as I said, we've already agreed we'll consider this on a more strategic basis, particularly around housing, but obviously all the other issues that we've dealt with. Okay, so members content to note, and then we move on then to the next item under 13. Any other business? There's nothing under any other business people want to raise. Before I do that, I mean, there were a number of issues that are just in the, just Kevin's drawn to my attention now. If we go back to, if you don't mind going back to the committee, the item 5, this is responses to your, just in case people haven't noticed, I mean, there were a number of other consultations or I didn't specifically mention. One there on Employment and Learning Committee, Post-School Provisions, one there on the CAL Committee. As I say, we have had no suggestions or proposals from people, so I just wanted to draw people's attention to all of those committee consultations, and people have already agreed We just want to make sure there's no oversight. Okay, so on that basis then, nothing further on the AOB, and the meeting stands adjourned, and then we return to our next meeting 27th next week. Thank you very much.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly.